Welcome back to the session. In the last session, we have discussed about the constructor injection. In this session, we'll discuss about the reference tag, and in the next session, we'll discuss about the auto wiring feature. Okay, so what is a reference tag? When we have to use the reference tag? For example, here I have constructed the two classes. One is vendor, and the other one is customer. So now what I'll do is I'll create a customer as a property in vendor class. Okay, now the vendor and the customer has a relationship between them. Okay, so first of all, what I'll do is I'll give some properties for the customer. So I'll give two or three properties. One is customer name, and the other one is location or address. I'll give address. That's fine. We'll take two properties. Okay, so let's generate the setters and getters for these properties. Generate setters and getters, select all. Okay, generated. Now what I'll do is, what I'm telling is, I'll create this customer class as a property and vendor. So private, here I'll create some properties. After that I'll give the property customer. Okay, vendor name, vendor name, and we have headquarters for the vendor. Okay, and we'll give one more property, which is customer details. Okay, so a vendor is having a has a relationship with the customer. Okay, now what I'll do is I'll generate the setters and getters for these three properties. Okay, if you know, if you go back in all the tutorials, in all the sessions, was what I have discussed is how we can set the values for the properties. If it is a string or it is a long or it is a double, we have set the properties. But here what we are taking, we are taking the customer, we are taking the customer class as a property. So how to set this how to set the value for this property? How? So let's see. So what I'll do is I'll create a separate configuration XML to provide this bean information to that XML. I'll make that bean name as a some config XML. So here we have to provide this vendor and customer details in the beans tag. So first I'll provide the customer details, bean, name or ID, we can use ID, and class. So what is the class name for that bean? So here we are using customer. Okay, customer, and the object is customer, and the properties, what are the properties we have in this one? Customer name, Sajjad, and the property name equals to address, and the value we can provide as Bangalore. Okay, so now we have configured the bean information. Now we have to configure the vendor information, right? So let's create a bean. So give the bean ID equals to some vendor, that is not an object name. Here we have to provide the class name vendor. Okay, so we have given the vendor and we have to give the properties, right? So in the vendor class we have how many properties? We have three properties: vendor name, headquarters, and the customer details. So let's configure these properties. Property name, vendor name, and the value equals to, here I'll give iPhone or Apple as a vendor, right? Not iPhone. Okay, so here we have one more property which is nothing but headquarters, and it is in USA, New York. Okay, and we have one more property, that is customer details. So vendor name, headquarters, these are the string values. We can directly provide the value for that. So what about this customer detail? Customer detail is an object of which class? Customer class. If you go to the vendor, so customer details is an object of property or property name or object of customer class. So we have to give the customer details to this bean, to this vendor. Okay, how we can give? How we can give? If you see here, we have already created a customer information. We have already created the customer bean. Okay, so what is our intention in vendor class? Whenever we are calling set customer name, when we are calling the set customer details, what it will do? It should set the customer details to us. Whenever we are calling setter method of this customer details, it should set all these details to us. How we need to do that? We have already bean is created over here. So how to tell the bean, how to tell the container, whenever you are calling this customer details, you have to call this, you have to get this customer. So for that, in order to do that, we have a reference attribute. We are telling that with reference attribute, hey, whenever you call the customer details, just go and get the details from the customer. This customer will have all these details. Okay, so what you have to do, you have to give your customer the ID name. Now fine, so now here we are setting the vendor name, headquarters, and the customer details. Okay, so fine, let's go and write the client application. Here we are writing our client application, new class. So I will write vendor client. Okay, public static void main finish. Okay, so here I'll create an object of a application context, some object name equals to new class path XML application context, and it will take the configuration location. So what is our configuration XML file name? config.xml. So let's import this application context as well. Now whenever we are giving this config.xml configuration metadata, the container will create an object of the beans, whatever the beans we have configured in this configuration XML file. So all these beans will be created. Okay, so if you want to work with a vendor bean, so you have to get the bean, get bean. So what is the object? Vendor. Let's see. So I have given the vendor object, just copy and paste into this vendor. Fine. So what this method will return? It will return object. Can do explicit typecasting directly, but I'll convert this object into vendor. Vendor en equals to I'm converting this obj to vendor imported. Okay, now if you want to get the vendor name, you can write ve dot get vendor name. If you want to get the customer name, can write ve dot, because in in vendor only the customer will be there, na. Ve dot get customer details. Guess customer details will have customer name. Okay, so here I'll add and concatenate vendor name. Here I'll concatenate, this is the customer name. Okay, so now let's run this application. Okay, let's run as Java application. So now we should get the vendor name and the customer name. The vendor name is Apple and the customer name is Sajjad. Okay, I hope you people understood this example. Okay, if you have any doubts, please write in the comment section that I can explain you in a better way.